now in the United States of America with the pre-foreclosure market and what is going on with the market in the first place. Now, there is a lot of information that you can gather from mainstream news sources and from articles and from social media and from talking to other people that are working in the industry. But what I would like to talk to you about specifically today is more specifically what's going on with the pre-foreclosure situation in the United States right now. And one thing that I have to tell you is that the numbers of people that are falling behind on their mortgages, both in residential property, also in commercial property of multiple different classes, are substantially higher than most people think they are. They're substantially higher. I talk to servicers, debt servicers, all day, every day. I also talk to tax collecting authorities, including municipalities and even the IRS, on an almost daily basis. There is a massive undercurrent of people in this country right now that are 30 days or more behind on their mortgage. There is an even larger group of people that are barely hanging on by the skin of their teeth to keeping up with their mortgage payments right now. Now, it's not a repeat of 2008, meaning it's not the same type of causation, okay? In 2008, most of the crisis was actually caused by very, very loose financial regulations, and a whole bunch of people with 580 credit scores and even some below that were able to go out and buy property with zero skin in the game. They had a horrible bill payment history, even including things like getting their cell phones shut off on a regular basis and their electricity, behind on their car notes as a lifestyle, yet a bank would give them $500,000 to go out and buy a house without a single red penny invested in it themselves. Now, that is not the case any longer. Since that point, we've had Dodd-Frank and a whole bunch of other regulation that has changed it so that people now do need to qualify. However, what happened with the COVID crisis in 2020 caused an unprecedented printing of trillions and trillions of dollars, which brought about quite a bit of consequence known as inflation, okay? In particular, with your average mortgage, you have PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, right? So even if you didn't refinance into higher rates, the fact of the matter is, no matter where you live in the United States of America, your property taxes are higher right now in the fall of 2023 than they were in the spring of 2020. And they're higher by a substantial margin, no matter who you are or where you live in this country. The other thing, your property insurance is definitely at least 20% more expensive than it was in the spring of 2020. So when your average mortgage payment consists of 4 factors, and at the very least, even if you had your principal and your interest fixed because you were in a low interest fixed 30-year loan, the other 2 factors, the taxes and insurance, have been varying greatly, and therefore your monthly payment has been going up on average by about 20%, okay, in those 2 categories. The insurance and the taxes have each grown by about 20%. Both are continuing to grow, and as a matter of fact, there is a substantial threat at this point in time of a whole bunch of people not even having access to homeowners insurance on their property. That being the case, it is very, very important to understand these costs are going to continue to rise, along with the cost of energy, the cost of gasoline, the cost of food, all of our different costs, cost of healthcare, all of these things are continuously going up. The wages for the average American are not going up on the same pace, okay? They have not kept up. We have substantially more people falling behind right now than are being reported. And when we factor for the amount of people that are, for example, their mortgage payment is due on the 1st of the month, they're carrying it out until the 20th of the month before they can actually make that payment. And now they're getting to the point where it's the 27th, the 28th of the month. You got a whole bunch of people all over the country, which people don't realize unless they deal with this on a daily basis and are actually interacting with the parties that have the benefit of this knowledge, right? Most people don't realize this. At the end of the day, the fact of the matter is the amount of people who are making their September 1st mortgage payment right now, September 28th, is staggering. The amount of people that are going to miss this September mortgage payment, which ultimately, if it's not paid by the end of the day on Sunday, if it's not registered as paid by the end of the day, this upcoming Sunday, it's going to be a late payment. Okay? Or Saturday, as a matter of fact, I think it is. Yeah, Saturday. Saturday is the 30th. It's the last day of the month. Come Monday, there are going to be hundreds of thousands of people across the United States that are now behind on their mortgage that weren't behind on their mortgage at the beginning of this month. That is the pace at which people are falling behind. Very, very important to bear that in mind. We also have a whole bunch of people who have been sitting on the market for a substantial period of time trying to get their properties sold. And their properties are not selling in the same way and at the same pace that they were selling a year and a half ago. See, right up until the beginning of the summer of 2022, the COVID climb, as I like to call it, was rapidly and aggressively growing. Property values were growing and growing and growing to the point where it was sometimes 2 or 3% per month that a property was going up just by existing because of the inflationary conditions. Now, what does this mean for us moving forward? Well, guys, there's a lot of things that are different this time around. One of them is AI or other technologies that resemble AI. Other predictive technologies. Almost every mortgage servicer in the entire country, the entire world for that matter, but definitely the entire country, is utilizing some form of predictive AI in their processes. One example I'm going to give you is that many people who have fallen behind on their mortgage to a point where they're officially in default have actually been thrown into a loan modification that they never requested. A loan modification that they never requested. They are being offered a loan modification, which right now, the most popular move with FHA loan modifications, VA loan modifications, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the most popular move that they're making right now is to turn your 30-year loan into a 40-year loan. That is the most common modification that they are making right now. Lots of people that find themselves 2, 3, 4 months behind, or even 2, 3, 4 years behind, are randomly getting letters in the mail from their servicer stating that they have been fully pre-qualified for a 40-year loan mod. That's something to be cognizant of. You need to be aware of that. An extra 10 years of amortization on your mortgage is not going to have positive effects on your equity. Very important to understand that. Please don't let that one slip. Fact of the matter is, it's affecting a whole bunch of people. It is most definitely affecting a whole bunch of people, and it's something we really need to be paying attention to. Now, in talking to collections departments from just about every major mortgage servicer in the entire country inside of the past 2 weeks, I am talking to people across the board at Mr. Cooper, at GMAC, at Wells Fargo, at SLS, SPS, PHH, New Res, all kinds of mortgage servicers and lenders that are telling me that at this point in time, their loss mitigation department, the phones are ringing all day, every day, and everybody is working overtime. This is only the beginning of this particular rash of foreclosure activity. Foreclosure activity has been consistently growing every single month in the United States. Every single month, foreclosure activity is growing. Now, there are many naysayers out there that are talking about what I'm discussing right now, and they don't understand that this simply hasn't caught up yet. The data has not caught up yet, okay? The data has not caught up to what's actually going on quite yet. So we still see a lot of people that have not yet fallen behind, many of whom are really struggling to juggle their monthly expenses, okay? The amount of people that are calling in proactively to their mortgage servicers and seeking a modification to their mortgage or some other form of financial relief is absolutely staggering. We all know, keeping up with the Joneses here in the United States, I don't know who the fuck these Joneses are, by the way. I'm not familiar with who they are, but it seems as though keeping up with them is a very high priority for a large cross-section of the American population. One thing that comes with keeping up with the Joneses is not being truthful about your own financial circumstances. That is one of the negative side effects of living that month to month lifestyle, that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle that so many Americans live, where they're barely keeping up. They're barely keeping their head above water. They're making $5,000 a month and their living expenses are $4,900 a month. So God forbid they get a flat tire. And it doesn't matter what those numbers change to. Similar ratios are employed by most Americans. Most Americans live really fast and loose, not very conservatively financially, especially these past couple of years with all that free money flying around from the COVID relief. Everybody was getting their $900 a week unemployment when they weren't going to work, and the rates were artificially low for an extended period of time. All kinds of factors leaning toward easy money. What happens is when that money starts to tighten up a little bit, it catches up a lot faster than we realize in many cases. Working almost exclusively in pre-foreclosure and other related situations, tax default, pre-foreclosure, other forms of financial default, right? That is my specialty and has been my specialty since March of 2000. Working in this industry that entire time, the only other time when I have personally seen loss mitigation departments and collection departments of servicers anywhere near this busy. The last time I personally saw this level of busy, meaning I'm waiting 3 days on average to get a reply to a basic email from any given servicer right now, okay? That being the case, last time I saw this level of activity was about 2012, toward the end of the last foreclosure crisis. Since then, I've been consistently working short sales, subject to transactions, and all kinds of other pre-foreclosure strategies. And at no point between 2012 and 2023 was there anywhere near this level of hectic volume. The amount of new people calling in every day to their servicer in response to some of the things they're getting in the mail is outright insane. People are not educated on how foreclosure works. Do you remember your tax classes in high school? I know you don't, because you weren't taught shit about it or anything else about finance. People don't understand how foreclosure works. Okay? I meet people on a regular basis who try to send in June's mortgage payment in the middle of September. One singular payment. They don't realize that payment is not going to be accepted and applied. It's going to be put in a suspense account for somewhere between 90 and 180 days before it is then mailed back to them. So they lose out on having their cash on hand. They mail it in. It does nothing to satisfy the debt or keep the debt current. They're still heading toward pre-foreclosure. They're just not officially there yet. Another major thing that happened that a lot of people are not aware of during this whole COVID crisis, a lot of people were put into a forbearance that they didn't necessarily have to qualify for at all. There was no qualification whatsoever. It was simply, we're not receiving payments. We're not reporting anything to credit bureaus. We're just going to freeze all credit activity and not do anything. I've met a bunch of people that were a year and a half behind on their mortgage, had not made a single payment in a year to a year and a half. Their credit report did not reflect that. Think about that. Credit report did not reflect that. Very, very, very important to bear this in mind. Very important to bear this in mind. Okay. Now, part of the reason that I'm mentioning this to all of you guys is at this stage of the game, we are back to a point where specializing in pre-foreclosures and other forms of financially distressed investment properties is going to be one of the busier overall areas. It's going to be one of the better and hotter niches. Now, for me personally, it's been 23 and a half years of doing this, and almost exclusively this, but always this. And there's never been a point where I had to worry about when I'm going to get my next meal. It's never been a concern. There's always plenty of pre-foreclosure activity, even during times when there is barely any, relatively speaking. We're still talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans. You got to remember, there are 350 million people in this country. So if you've got 1 million people at any given point that are in default on their mortgages, it's a drop in the bucket compared to the population. So when it's reported from a statistical point of view, people can make it sound like nothing. you could still be closing dozens of those deals. And when we're talking about an average transactional profit, just a quick wholesale deal with most of the pre-foreclosures that I do, with an average transactional profit well above $50,000 on an average transaction, you only need so damn many of these before you're making a hell of a living out of it. So it's certainly a skill worth learning. One of the reasons that I mention this at this point in time is that being able to offer solutions to people that are in this type of situation, you're able to benefit from one of the very few things that most realtors and real estate investors do not get, which is this. I didn't come up with the line, but I'm going to recycle it anyway, okay? Sellers that want to sell will make you old. They will turn all of your hairs gray, and they will grow the ulcers in your body and all that other unhealthy shit at a rapid rate. Sellers who need to sell, they have no choice whatsoever but to sell, or they're going to face a very negative circumstance or a very negative consequence. Those are the sellers that will make you rich. Knowing how to specifically solve certain problems and having multiple solutions available for those problems is a wonderful way to remain permanently relevant. Please write that down, permanently relevant. There has not been a year since 2000. My first 2 or 3 years were a little slow, relatively speaking, okay? But there has not been a year since 2000 that I didn't close dozens of deals. Most of the years since that point, I've been able to close dozens of deals just on autopilot referrals because of the fact that so few people know how to resolve these situations. Very oftentimes, I'm dealing with properties that have a dozen plus liens on them, where they might have code enforcement liens from the city, a first mortgage that's in arrears, a home equity line that's in arrears, maybe some contractor liens, maybe some unpaid tax liens, whether that's IRS or a local state agency. So at this point in time, in January of 2023, we launched, which we have partnered with the Kingdom Real Estate on, we launched a brand new community that focuses on specifically pre-foreclosure opportunities and how to deal with them. You can reach out to the folks that are playing this video to find out about that, about the opportunity that the Kingdom offers specifically in pre-foreclosure mentorship. Pre-foreclosures are not going anywhere, guys. And over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, the amount of pre-foreclosure activity and other forced sale activity where some institution or entity that is owed money is going to force the sale of property or force the refinancing of property or force the restructuring of debt that is attached to property. These are opportunities that are growing rapidly right now. And over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, based on the current economic climate, these opportunities are only going to grow. There is no reduction in these opportunities anywhere in the near future in sight. There are no government programs that are effectively helping people to manage to stay out of pre-foreclosure. There are some that allow people to kick the can down the road, so to speak. Okay? But that's it. That is it, unfortunately. So we have to understand that and be cognizant of that because it is a very important component of how this all ends up working out. Very, very, very important to understand at this stage of the game that right now, the way the economy is shaking out with all of the costs rising, average incomes, and I say this because many of you who are watching this are entrepreneurs, okay? You are investors. You are business people. Therefore, you have grabbed the bull by the horns, so to speak, and taken charge of your own income, your own finances, your own future. You've taken charge of the trajectory, future tense, of your family, of the generational wealth of your family. So you may not understand readily, and you may actively avoid thinking about what it's like to live the restricted lifestyle of the average W-2 employee in the United States. Let me remind you, the average W-2 employee averaged out throughout the United States makes somewhere in the mid $60,000 a year, like $65,000, $66,000 a year. In that ballpark when we average it out across the 50 states. There are some places where that median average is substantially higher, such as New York City or Boston, LA, Honolulu. There's also going to be some places, which I'm not as talented at naming, where that is going to be a lower average. mortgage. Perhaps somewhere in flyover country, you might have an average income in the 40s or 50s, but you're also going to have substantially lower expenses. What we have to understand is when somebody has a hard cap at, say, $65,000, $66,000 a year, if their expenses increase year over year by $5,000 or $6,000, you're talking about potentially as much as 10% of their gross income. Most people in this country do not live in such a way where they can afford that financial shock to the system. That is most people. By most, my definition of most for the context of this video, more than 51%. Okay? That is all my definition of most is. More than 51%. Okay? The reality of the matter is a very similar statistic. Most of those people that fit in that category, if they woke up tomorrow morning and blew their transmission on their way to work, that's a catastrophic problem for them. They don't have a means to pay for it. They don't have enough space on a credit card to pay for it. They don't have the cash in their savings account to pay for it. That is most Americans right now, with an average replacement cost of about $3,000 for a transmission. I think I'm being very generous on that end. Most Americans, more than 51% of Americans, cannot afford that repair right now. If it became necessary that they have to do that to continue getting to work every day, they cannot afford it. That is something very important to bear in mind. It's easy for us when we're thinking about our upward trajectory and we're focused on self-improvement and we're focused on exploring the highest and best use of our time on this planet. And we're thinking in abundance, right? Because that's what we do in the business owner and investor segments. We're always thinking in terms of abundance. We don't come from a scarcity mentality. But we can lose touch with the scarcity mentality that dominates the vast majority of the population if we don't proactively aim to remain in contact or to remain relevant. So one of the things that I want to make sure you guys are cognizant of when it comes to the pre-foreclosure opportunities, one of the biggest things that I want to make sure you guys are cognizant of and keep this top of mind, there are many, many, many opportunities to help these people that are having serious problems right now, some of whom have not become public knowledge yet. Some of them have, some of them haven't, right? Very, very important to understand there are ways to help these people where you can bring value to the marketplace. And this is a growing problem. It's a problem that is continuing to get realer and realer and realer every month. Guys, please feel free to reach out to the Kingdom Center. Please feel free to download the Kingdom Center app. There should be a link in wherever you're watching this for you to be able to do that. And feel free to reach out. We would love to talk to you further about this matter. Absolutely.